The Dodgers didn't make any new roster moves on Wednesday, but they did make official the big one from last week. Roki Sasaki is officially a Dodger. We'll talk about his press conference, some of the stuff we learned about the Dodgers sale pitch to him, and a bunch more. Let's get live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Wednesday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And with that said, Vince, it was a big day for the Dodgers, not in terms of new news, but in terms of locking down old news. If we can call Roki Sasaki old news now, it's been, 5 or 6 days since he announced he was coming to the Dodgers. They made it official today. The Dodgers announced it officially this morning, and then this afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, they had the press conference where he was officially introduced, put on the uniform for the first time. From a content creator's perspective, it means we now have pictures of Roki Sasaki in a Dodger uniform that we can use for, YouTube thumbnails and stuff like that. That's exciting. But most exciting is that Roki Sasaki is now a Dodger. Were you there live at the press conference today?
Yeah.
What were your impressions in person?
He's tall. That was the first impression, definitely. And for everything that's been said about Roki and maybe how they threw out the idea that maybe he wouldn't want a big market, he's not a big media guy. You could tell that early on in the press conference. His answers were a little short, and he didn't know exactly how to answer certain things. But as it went on, he seemed to get more comfortable. Definitely, obviously, more comfortable once we got to the Japanese questions part of things. I know he answered that he wants to find the best burger in LA. When you talked to Kirsten, we saw that Mookie Betts commented that he wants to take him to take milk or try milkshakes. So maybe that was something else he mentioned. So definitely there's a personality there, and I'm excited to see if it comes out a little bit more. But all in all, it was fun to be back at the stadium, and great to see Roki Sasaki wearing Dodger blue. And if some people pointed out, don't know if you noticed the number or not the number, well, the numbers, I guess, and the name on the back are back to seemingly normal. So
yeah, it is kind of interesting. They have the same jerseys as last year, it appears, because you still have the smaller placket, I think is what they call it. So on the old style, you had the MLB logo above the seam, and then the seam, and then the name. Now, because the smaller placket, they still have the MLB logo below that, and then the name below that. So I would guess if you put a jersey from 2 years ago side by side with these jerseys, you'd see the names are probably 3 inches lower on the back than they were, but the big names are back for sure. It looks good. The smaller placket means that it's still split in the middle of the O or the D or whatever, the middle of the D on the front on the Dodgers, which was always my smallest concern about the jerseys. The smaller names was my big gripe with them. So that was definitely nice to see. I was in a group with a Japanese speaker during the press conference, and he said that Will the Thrill's translations were not the best, missed a lot of context, missed a lot of stuff. And I don't speak Japanese. I don't know if that's for sure true, but it did seem like there were a couple times where Will's answers were shorter than Roki's answers that he was translating.
Yeah, it's interesting because last year, Will got thrown into the mix, and the first time he was interpreting after Ipe, it was like, oh man, this is perfect. Like he's seemingly giving us longer answers and maybe, more of what Ohtani was saying. And then, this one, it did seem, I was standing next to a couple people, and us not knowing Japanese. And I know that from trying to learn Japanese for like a few weeks, I know that there are a lot of words to say, not as many words in English. But even knowing that, it did seem like Roki was saying stuff, and Will was maybe just giving gist of it rather than a perfect translation.
Yeah, that was the impression I got, maybe. But even what we got, I thought it was interesting. You could tell that Roki got a little bit emotional when talking about. He mentioned a few times the fires in LA, and if you know his backstory, you can understand why he would get emotional thinking about natural disaster causing that kind of damage. If you don't know his backstory, his father and his grandparents, I believe, died in the tsunamis in Japan when he was 11 years old, I think. And so definitely hits close to home to him. You could tell listening to him talk. Yeah, you mentioned him being tall, and that was something that surprised me because he's listed at 6'2", and I'm you could see him standing there with, like, we know Andrew Friedman's short, but Brandon Gomes as a player was listed at 5'11". Dave Roberts was listed at 5'10", and I'm grabbing a picture right now that I should have grabbed before we started. I'm going to upload it real quick so we can pop it up here on the screen, and you can see there's definitely more than a gap of 3 inches between Roki Sasaki and Brandon Gomes. Sorry, this picture's up. There we go. Popping it up on the screen now. And I don't even think there's really any forced perspective here. It's not like Gandalf sitting next to Frodo in the wagon and Fellowship of the Ring or anything. Like, I wonder if that's just an outdated height listing for Roki. And obviously, Brandon Gomes being listed at 5'11", I don't think anybody's 5'11", because anybody who's actually 5'11" as a baseball player, they're going to claim 6 feet. So Brandon Gomes, it might be an Alex Bregman situation where Alex Bregman claims to be 6 feet and he's actually 3'7". But I wonder if Roki Sasaki is more like 6'3" or 6'4", because that was my first time. That dude's a giant. And so I looked, wait, 6'2"? There's no way all those guys are that short.
Yeah. I don't, maybe the conversion from centimeters or meters to inches and feet didn't quite make it, since we are the only ones that use that. But yeah, regardless of that, he looked tall. He said a lot of great things in terms, like I said, we may get full answers here. I'm sure there's, some people that have fully transcribed what he said. But, the biggest thing that he said was why he chose the Dodgers was the stability in the front office, which is something that, I don't know if you meant specifically front office or just meant like maybe the organization, but regardless, the Dodgers, have that stability with Friedman being here for a while. They have the stability with, all the ownership being here for a while now. And, the Dodgers obviously being known as a winning franchise and all that. And, he talked about how having Japanese players on the team wasn't a requirement to join the team, but he's excited to play with Ohtani and Yamamoto. And, he did want to know that when they asked about Los Angeles specifically, he said he did want to know or make sure that the team and city would embrace a Japanese player if that's where he chose to go. And obviously, we know the Dodgers have a long history of that and, a big Japanese population. So it'll be good for him and good for all. And well, maybe I don't want to talk too long, but, Andrew Friedman just did kind of mention, if you thought we had a prearranged deal with Sasaki before, maybe you should think about why you thought that. And that might be why he chose the Dodgers. And everything that Sasaki said pretty much, mentioned that.
Yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit more. We'll dig in more to the aspect of having Japanese teammates and their role in his recruiting pitch from the Dodgers in a minute. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, I love sports, I love concerts, I love comedy shows. The thing they all have in common is buying tickets, and that means the other thing they have in common is you can find the best price on Game Time. Now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I went with my wife and two sons to a Utah Jazz game a couple weeks ago. And when we were looking at the tickets to buy for the boys for Christmas, I checked all the sites because that's what I do. And what do you know? Game Time had the best prices, just like they always promise they will. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to your favorite events with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Hey, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks for being an everydayer if you are. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. And you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. Again, we want to thank those of you who are with us live here on Wednesday night. We really enjoy doing these live shows with you guys and talking with you guys in the chat and talking Dodgers. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can check out Locked On Sports Day and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. And for your second listen, you can check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. Little before we jump back into Roki, couple little things. I guess we never did mention the Hall of Fame voting. CC Sabathia and Ichiro and Billy Wagner all got into the Hall of Fame. So there'll be 5 inductees when you count the 2 from the Veterans Committee, Dick Allen and Dave Parker. So should be a fun time in July for those induction ceremonies. No former Dodgers, right? None of those. Well, Dick Allen played for the Dodgers, but of these 3 elected by the writers, no former Dodgers. So
supposedly Sabathia was almost a Dodger. If we had competent ownership.
Yep. You and I both like CC Sabathia quite a bit. So happy about it. I like all 3 of the good. I was really happy to see Billy Wagner get in. I've changed my tune a lot over the years as far as relievers in the Hall of Fame goes. Other bit of Dodgers news.
On that interesting note is that Ichiro was a natural right-handed hitter, but his dad made him about lefty. And Billy Wagner was a natural right-handed thrower, but broke his arm and started throwing lefty. So whatever if your kids are doing something right now, maybe make them do the opposite.
Yeah. Hey, it couldn't be worse, right? Yeah. We did hear that the Dodgers are possibly shopping Ryan Brazier, which isn't not much more to say than that. We talked a little bit about that likelihood last night. If they really do finalize this Kirby Yates deal along with the Tanner Scott deal, it would make sense that Ryan Brazier would be on the trade block. But back to Roki Sasaki, I thought it was interesting at the press conference where the first couple times he was asked specifically about Yamamoto and Ohtani, he just kind of didn't answer that part of the question. And I wonder when people asking questions at press conferences will learn to not ask 2 separate questions, because you're never going to get the answer to both of them. Nobody ever answers both parts of a 2-part question. They pick the part they want to answer and they answer it. And so the first couple times he just didn't answer the part about Ohtani and Yamamoto. Then somebody asked him specifically just about Ohtani and Yamamoto. So he did have to mention them a little bit. It seemed like, I don't know. Not too much to read into that probably, other than the fact that, like you said, he did say it was important to him to know that he would be, whether it's embraced. The Japanese speaker I was in a group with said that the word he actually said more translates to respected, that a Japanese player would be respected. Will said embraced. I don't know that that's a difference of any significance at all. But either way, obviously it makes it a little bit easier, him being able to talk to 2 Japanese players who've been in similar situations to him and them say, yeah, it's awesome. That it could definitely make him feel better if he had any misgivings.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard not from Sasaki, obviously, but in all the reports and everything so far, we heard that Yamamoto was, one of the guys that was kind of a driving force in this and talking to Roki and all that type of stuff. And then we heard, Ohtani was maybe similarly doing stuff, maybe more in the background, but Ohtani was the one that broke the news that to the Dodgers front office that they were going to get Roki. So realistically, as much as they try to downplay and as much as, baseball is a global game, but you're always going to feel a little bit more comfortable with someone that is similar to you or going through something that, you're going to go through now and all that type of stuff. And obviously when those players are Shohei Ohtani, the greatest player on earth, and, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who proved himself to be a legitimate starting pitcher in the major leagues, then that's a little bit, easier to swallow as well. He's played with them before, in the World Baseball Classic. And yeah, while it maybe wasn't the deciding factor or the main factor, it definitely played into it, I got to imagine.
Yeah, there was also an interesting article from Jack Harris in the LA Times that went into more detail about the Dodgers recruiting of Sasaki, and it included the tidbit that Shohei and Yoshinobu they took Roki out to lunch back in December and had lunch with him. And it almost gave the vibe, and I'm not sure if I'm reading too much into it. I kind of got the impression that it was almost as if Roki may have been concerned about, I don't want to step on your toes. They're in the Japanese culture. There's a lot of, respect for the, your elders, the people who've come before you, whatever. And almost like they were reassuring him, no, we really want you on our team with us. Like we think of you. We want you to be an equal with us. We want you to come help us win another World Series. It was almost like not so much, hey, please come play with us, but more of you have our permission to come play with us. We would like that,
Yeah, I mean, it's little brother aspect, I'm sure, played a little bit into it. And, you don't always want a little brother to play with you when you're a little bit older. And eventually you get to a point where you do want that, or you do want to embrace them. And, that might have been part of this. And this wasn't part of the actual press conference, but Stan Kasten stayed after and he was talking to reporters and stuff. And they asked him about, kind of the recruitment of Sasaki and everything else. And he mentioned how it was an organizational, full court press on what they needed to do. He said obviously from the scouts and and all that, going back to the previous, Dodger regimes and everything from there, different places can help. He mentioned the marketing and social media and, the analytics team and this and that and everything else. And that's, part of that is the players. And I think it was Gomes or Friedman said, like, the players showed out. That report said that, about 3/4 of the team had reached out to Roki in some capacity or talked to him. We'll talk about Clayton Kershaw being a part of that, even though he's not officially signed to the Dodgers. Like, it was when more and more comes out about this, and, obviously we're not probably going to hear everything from the Blue Jays and the Padres and any other team side of things. But when you hear and see everything from the Dodgers side of things, plus the fact that they're coming off winning the World Series, playoffs, double-digit years, playoffs in a row and all that type of stuff, if you're a smart person, the conspiracy theory kind of goes away a little bit.
Yeah, if you're a smart person, the conspiracy theory never took hold in the first place. But, some people do let their intelligence get overwhelmed by their fandom sometimes. Yeah,
well,
we didn't
get investigated, so I can give you the premise of something.
Yeah, although if they investigated and cleared them, that, Anyway, we don't have solid numbers, exact numbers, but like you said, 3/4 of the roster, probably about 20 players were involved either in person when they had dinner at Peter Gubler's house because Dodger Stadium was under renovation, brought in a sushi chef and a bunch of players either in person or making videos. Like, for example, Yamamoto wasn't there in person. He was out of town, but he made a video. Mookie Betts stood up and spoke for about 10 minutes, which, it's funny. Like, I wonder if Red Sox fans are still who is this Mookie guy? Because Mookie's just so quiet and reserved when he's on the Red Sox, and he's really taken that leadership role with the Dodgers. But, everybody getting involved and say, yeah, we want you. And then you're like Fernando Tatis wasn't even involved with the Padres. Like he's your big star, the guy who's going to be there the longest. I guess everybody's signed for 1,000 years with the Padres, but kind of interesting just how much the Dodgers put on the full court press, like you said, and just made it very, very clear. We want you to be with us. And we, so many guys in Dodger blue can make the case. Here's how the Dodgers have helped make me better. Specifically for me, this is how I've gotten better. All these, so many testimonials there. And I think that's something that's unique to the Dodgers because most organizations aren't as good at making their players better. And so they don't have as many in-person testimonials with proof that they can make you better.
Yeah, and even the homework assignment that Roki had given them, I think it was reported that happened like 4 days before everything was going down and with meetings and stuff. But the Dodgers had already looked into it, and not that other teams hadn't, but the Dodgers legitimately did what they needed to do. They had stuff ready, and they presented stuff to him. I'm sure they'll present more to him, and at the end of the day, it already made the most sense to us that the Dodgers were the right choice for what you can see on the outside. And then when we get all the peeks behind the curtain, it makes a lot more sense of how do play, if the Dodgers approach you, if you're a player, like, how do you not choose the Dodgers?
Yeah, like Andrew Friedman said, all those reasons you could think of why it made sense for him to sign with the Dodgers, that's why he signed with the Dodgers. And like you mentioned briefly, Clayton Kershaw was among those who helped recruit him. We're going to talk a little bit more about that and then get into our expectations for Roki Sasaki in his rookie year. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Select Quote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million with no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. Select Quote. They shop, you save. We are back. Thanks again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen or your last listen, whichever listen it is. We appreciate it. Thanks for being every day, or thanks for being here with us live on Wednesday night. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. And Clayton Kershaw is not currently a Dodger. We talked the other day about how silly it is that people keep talking like there's a chance he won't be a Dodger. And if there was any doubt in anybody's mind, I think the fact that Clayton Kershaw was actively involved in recruiting Roki Sasaki to the Dodgers kind of puts those questions to rest, right?
Yeah, that plus Brandon Gomes directly answered a question about Kershaw after, and he had updates on his progress with hasn't thrown off a mound, but he's started throwing and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it would. I mean, the only way it wasn't going to happen is if, like we mentioned, Kershaw got hurt again, or if Kershaw or the Dodgers were straight up lying. But there's nothing to that. There's nothing to that extent yet. So Kershaw will be back. The fact that he was part of it, I mean, when you have Mookie talking for all this time, you have Ohtani, you have Yamamoto, you have all this stuff, but you have Clayton Kershaw, who's been a legitimate starting pitcher for like 3/4 of Roki Sasaki's life. Like, that's a pretty easy pitch to receive and something that stands out, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it speaks to Kershaw's willingness to just do what's best for the team, that he is recruiting a guy who makes it harder for Kershaw to get starts. Like, this is one of the guys who's going to be taking starts from him. Kershaw recognizes where he is in his career and what his role is on this team. And I think that means a lot. Another update that Brandon Gomes gave was saying that the concern over Michael Kopech's forearm is overblown. He said that Kopech is in his throwing progression now. He's getting ready for the season. It didn't go as far as to say the report that he's going to miss the first month of the season is false, but also didn't confirm that. It was just kind of he kind of downplayed the concern. So at this point, I guess I would still expect him to not start this season on the active roster, but it seems like it's not something the Dodgers are concerned about at all at this point.
Yeah, or at least not front-facingly. You never know. But, I mean, realistically, you have a full off season to kind of go through things, and the Dodgers are not going to push them. And we talked about how They just want guys ready for, like, the Dodgers. It's kind of funny because usually the Dodgers, if they get hurt, and then we're kind of waiting for the guys that get hurt to start the season to kind of come back. But now this year, like, even if some guys got hurt to start the season, there's like 5, 6, 7 guys that are supposed to come back mid-season to late mid-season. So, the reinforcements will be there regardless. And, the Dodgers can take advantage. Like, we've talked about it before, but playoffs are essentially a formality at this point. The division, not 100% a formality, but it should be the way, the Dodgers have much more talent than everyone else, to where you are playing April and May games, maybe like, glorified, not spring training, but you don't have to worry as much. And we've talked about that before in the past. Are they trying to win every game? Yes. Are they going all out to win every game? No. And I think this year and probably moving forward will kind of show that, because, you want your guys healthy in October and not necessarily in April and May.
Yep. Another thing that the front office head honcho said was that Roki Sasaki, they're expecting him to be on the opening day roster, that he will be part of the big league team from the start. Obviously, that depends on how spring training goes, but they were saying we don't plan to artificially keep him down to limit his innings or anything like that, and which makes sense. So I guess what I want to talk about for these last few minutes, Vince, is what do you expect from Roki in his rookie year? What would you consider a successful season for Roki Sasaki in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, not being injured is obviously going to be one, but that's kind of a given. I think for Roki, and the thing we haven't talked about, and it's not to temper expectations or anything, is that, everyone that's talked about Roki says that he's less polished than any of the other guys come, whether that's because of the couple extra years that he didn't spend over there, or whether that's just, the nature of how he's coming to be. But I think that with the unfamiliarity, that's going to be a bonus in his, point with obviously learning from the Dodgers. That's going to be a bonus. I think his continued use of however he trained over there, but added on with the way, we train here in America a little bit differently, and maybe a little bit of bulk can help him out. And, the Dodgers get that velocity back up. I'm saying 20 starts of, under 3.5 ERA is considered a great success. Getting through the season and, establishing himself as a major league pitcher is the bare minimum success.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at too. I expect him to, but I mean, the velocity is such a big unknown, because we don't know, and apparently he doesn't know why his velocity was down last year, and so we might see him come out and he's throwing 101 again. If they do figure that in the spring, in which case, the expectations go way up, because with that fastball and with his splitter, and obviously they're going to work on secondary pitches, figure out the right pitch mix, all of that stuff. But that kind of underscores the point that this first season is going to be, spring training isn't going to be long enough to figure out, to do all those science experiments with him and figure it all out. And so I think it will be a work in progress. And I think we will see, we always in spring training, we're always talking about how don't look at results, because you never know if a guy is out there saying, I am just working on my slider today, so I'm going to throw a slider even when it doesn't make sense to throw a slider because I need to work on my slider. And we might see Roki doing some of that in actual regular season games, because they are, obviously you'll have your bullpen sessions between starts where they can do some of that stuff. But some stuff you just can't replicate, other than, hey, let's go see if you can get big league hitters out with this. And sometimes the answer is no. And the way to find out is by going out and getting lit up. And so we might see in the first couple months of the season games where Roki's pitch mix looks different and it doesn't work out or whatever. Maybe we won't. And maybe he's going to be good enough that even when he is experimenting, he has good enough stuff to have a reasonably successful outing. But it wouldn't shock me if we had some of those, because I think the Dodgers are looking at this as at least a 6-year partnership investment. And so if they spend the first month or two tweaking things, if it pays off down the road, and even down the road, meaning October 2025, it'll all be worth it. I think every Dodger fan would agree. We will take a loss, an ugly loss in April, if it directly leads to a beautiful win in October.
I mean, with Yamamoto, we took an ugly loss in
March.
April or March and April, because he pitched against Padres again, and ultimately, he's the one that helped take him out in the playoffs. So we've seen it before, but I mean, even Andrew Friedman alluded to that a little bit, and when they asked him the question about what did they present to Roki, part of the homework assignment, and he said it was a few different things, and mechanics when you're coming off injury. Roki did have the injury, like I think oblique or whatever it was, and sometimes you just don't figure it out. But he talked about figuring it out now, but also in real time. So when you do have something, and maybe your velocity is down or something's up, and can you figure it out in between starts, or can and all that type of stuff. And in Japan, a little different, maybe with the week off in between. The Dodgers are going to try to give guys 5-6 days off in between here, so it'll be similar, but it's all a process. And pitching is such one little tweak here and there, just like with your swing, one little tweak here and there. But from all we know, the Dodgers are one of the best at doing that and figuring that out. And with on top of the natural talent of Roki, like he's the number one prospect on Baseball America released their top 150. He was number one. The Dodgers have 5 other guys in there in the top with like 85. So but yeah, I mean, like I've told people before, and they ask like, oh, how can you explain Roki if they don't necessarily know? It's like, well, imagine if Paul Skeens had come out and got to pick whatever team he wanted to play with. Skeens has probably the velocity a little bit better and maybe a little bit more polish, at least from what we know. But Roki's stuff, that splitter is just as nasty as the splinker. So
yeah, and there is an incentive for the Dodgers to help Roki be as good as he can in 2025, because if he wins the Rookie of the Year award, the Dodgers get a bonus first-round draft pick next year, and so that would benefit them, which I guess leads to the last little bit of news that we ought to mention with Anthony Santander signing with the Blue Jays. That officially bumps the draft pick that the Dodgers got in the Gavin Lux trade down to the 41st pick. So the Dodgers will have the 40th and 41st picks in this year's draft. That's now locked in. But next year they could have a bonus pick in the 30s somewhere before their first pick, which will probably be number 40 overall, because it drops 10 spots because they spend a lot of money. So you know what? That CBA is trying to keep the Dodgers from spending money, but they keep on spending money because they love me. So you got anything else for today, Vince?
No. I say no, and then I say stuff, so no, I don't have anything.
Sometimes Vince doesn't know what no means. He's like a child that way. That'll do it for us. One more episode this week. We'll see if we get news on a Tanner Scott press conference. That could happen on Thursday. We don't know for sure, but whatever happens on Thursday, we'll be here to talk about it on Thursday evening live with you guys. So thank you for being here with us. Thanks for being live. Thanks for making us your first listen. If you're listening on Thursday morning, remember to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Text directly with us, get our thoughts on moves and rumors before the podcast, and you can be part of our exclusive Discord server talking with other Locked On Dodgers insiders about the Dodgers. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us at lockedondodgers@gmail.com. or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.